Welcome to the Tomball Video Museum Series, Episode 6. In this episode, we're going to cover the Stanley No. 35 Transitional Plane. Stanley made transitional planes between 1870 and 1940. This particular plane was probably manufactured between 1889 and 1892-ish, something like that. This is referred to as the P logo. The P logo came out on Stanley planes in 1886. This particular model has what's called a lateral adjustment. Stanley started putting lateral adjustments on their planes in 1885. This particular model has got this on the iron here. It's got a patent date of 1889, and it says B-plane patent 1889 on this particular plane. I had to clean this off a little bit so I could read the date on that. So we know just by the logo style, which came out in 1886, the patent date up here, so we can say definitely in that range. And of course, the lateral adjustment, which came out in 1885. You have to ask yourself, why did Stanley come out with a half iron and half wood plane? I mean, why don't you just make it like this from the get-go? Well, you have craftsmen that have been using these planes for generations in their families, and they're accustomed in using these full wooden planes. They're used to doing all the adjustments with the hammer and the lateral and the depth adjustments with everything with these tools to adjust the plane. Even with this plane here, the adjustments are the same on these wooden ones. So the idea that Stanley had is if we do a wooden base and all the mechanical iron adjustments, the craftsman probably will be more likely to transition from this right here to this. I'll say, oh man, I like this. It's so easy to adjust. I can move everything quickly. I don't have to be hammering and beating and doing all this other crazy stuff. So you can basically on the fly adjust these quickly. You can too when you get used to these. Well, then you come up with something like this. So Stanley made the wooden planes, then the half wooden, half iron, and then the full iron planes. So it's referred to as a transitional plane because it's transferring the user from a full wooden one to a full iron plane. The adjustments that came out on this transitional plane, the depth adjustment, lever cap, lateral adjustment, everything, they're on the newer planes also. And you can date these planes relatively simple by just the front knob. You can see how low this front knob is and how high this one is and how low this one is. Stanley changed from the lower knob to the higher knob in 1919. So just basically looking at this, you know that this is 1919 and before. This one is afterwards, just by looking at the knob. You can see that on these two older planes here, or these two planes, this is referred to as a keyhole. This is referred to as a kidney bean shaped hole on the lever cap. They changed from this hole, from the keyhole to the kidney bean hole in 1933. You can see on our transitional plane that this is a keyhole, so obviously it's before 1933. Stanley also stamped their logo on the lever cap in 1923. So 10 years difference between these two at least, right? Also, all of the planes, if you remember, have referred to as a lateral adjustment. This little knob here will move the iron back and forth. That came out in 1885. Also, the logos on the iron, if you notice the logos right here, these are different logos. This logo right here is the newer logo that was used between 1936 and 1970. This older logo, they came out with this in 1892. So you can tell the difference just with the different kinds of logos they stamped their planes with. Also in the back here, there's two things in the back. This is 1-inch knob right here, right? That's the depth adjustment. Moves the iron up and down, more or less cut. And the newer ones, this is 1.25 inches. So you can see the difference in those two knobs. One's 1 inch, one's 1.25 inches. This older one still has the inch knob. So we know that this is an older plane than this one here. Also, in the back, there's what's called a frog adjustment screw. If I can get the camera in, there's a little screw that came out. That came out in 1902. This one doesn't have a frog adjustment, and of course the older one doesn't have a frog adjustment. So we know by dating these and just putting these together, they all function, have all the same adjustments, but through the years, Stanley started to improve their design. Also on the bottom of it, this is a flat sole. This is what's referred to as a corrugated sole. This corrugated sole came out in 1998, or 1898, I'm sorry, 1898. So we can date it for sure, 1898 and before 1919 because of this. So we can get the date also, no frog adjustment back there. That's a 1902 model, so we can relatively date this. This one, of course, is a smooth bottom. This plane, our transitional plane that we're covering today, this has been cleaned up by someone before I got my hands on it. Someone has taken this apart and they painted it and cleaned up some of the rust. I'm not going to clean it up. I'm going to sharpen the blade, sharpen the iron, and put some oil on the lateral adjustment and the depth adjustment, and then we're going to use this plane. So that's basically the history on this little guy here. And let's go ahead and sharpen it up, get it oiled up, and let's use it. Okay, when I first got this frog was loose, and I had tightened it down just a little bit. I want to see what's going on underneath the frog. I don't want to, there might be like dirt or debris or something. So I'm just going to take it off real quick and look what's underneath it. Then I'm going to put the lever, I'm going to put the iron back in, and I'm going to adjust it. And then after I adjust it, we'll clean up and sharpen the cap iron and the iron. Let me see here if I can get this off. We don't want to booger up the wood. We don't want to damage this in any way. We're just going to leave the spray paint on there. Okay, so that looks good. That looks clean, and there's no debris underneath it. Looks fine. So we're just going to assemble this, and I'm going to show you how to adjust a frog on a plane if you ever have to adjust a frog on a plane ever. So let me get these screws tightened down just a little bit so we can move it. This frog is adjustable. You can see the slotted part in there. That means you can move this thing forward and backward, and that's important that you be able to do that. It gives you a little bit of adjustment for the iron hitting the surface of the wood that you're planing. And I'm going to show you why. I really like these transitionals. Okay, so I'm just going to tighten this down just so I can move it. This little bitty ruler I'm going to put down here, and I'm going to sight down it to make sure that the bed and this, it's a little loose right now, the bed and the frog have a nice, good surface, straight, flat surface across the bottom. There we go. Get the other side. Okay, so now, loosen it up just a tiny bit. This is super important that you get this right. I will tighten it and I will check it. And the challenging part about this is when you tighten these screws down, that frog wants to move. That's what's great about the invention about the frog adjustment. That's the screw that's in the back on the other ones. You just do a little bit on that. Check this. Check this one. Okay, so I put this and I reference off the frog, and that's all flush all the way down. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten this all the way up, and we can put the now you can see when we put the iron and cap iron in, it's going to be flush on the frog, and it's going to be flush on the bed of the plane. There we go. Before we start taking care of this iron and getting it squared away, all these parts in here, they're really hard to move. I don't want to break anything. I mean, you can move it, but it's hard. So I'm just going to come in here with some WD-40, and while we do get the iron squared away, I'm going to let this sit in there, especially with the threads on the depth adjustment. It's pretty bad in here, and that yoke is, there we go. Yeah, it moves now. Golly, that's a lot better. I'm gonna let this soak, and while this soaks, we're going to take care of this iron. I went ahead and took out the lever cap screw, and I put some oil on it, ran it down in the hole so there's oil in there. We're gonna clean that up too because there's a lot of gunk on that. We don't want it to get stuck. And we're just gonna take this off, and we're just gonna put this on the buffing wheel, and we're just gonna clean the rest of this up. And that's really all you have to do to this. Just clean it up. We'll reestablish this iron, and because it's in really bad shape, and then that's it. And then we're going to cut with it. So we're almost done with this. I found for my temporary sharpening station, I use the Supermax 16x32 drum sander, and it's got this this belt on it that's kind of sandpaper-like, and I'll put my stone on that and it doesn't slip around. I'll make something official later, but right now this seems to work pretty good for a little sanding or sharpening station. So right now we're going to take care of the lever cap. Remember, the purpose of this lever cap is to provide pressure to the back of the iron, just like that. So we need to make sure that this is flat, and when I cleaned it up on the buffing wheel, it seemed flat to me. So I'm just going to run it on here real lightly and look at it to see. Yeah, see it's shiny all the way across. Just a little bit more. And this is a 1200 stone right here. So that's all, it's shiny all the way across, and that's all we need to provide pressure. Now with 1200, we're just going to switch to the iron, and we're going to make sure that the back of the iron is flat. And I'm not going to do this whole thing on camera because I've sharpened many of irons on previous videos, so you can see how it's starting to shine. It needs to be really flat, and the reason why, I'm going to switch to 600, just a little bit more aggressive. The reason why it needs to be flat is because that bevel needs to meet that flat surface perfectly. So we're just going to do 600, and we may have to even go to 4, even 200 grit, a little bit more aggressive. But we'll see what kind of, see the water's changing colors, the iron's coming off, metal's coming off of the blade. And see, we're starting to get a flat surface all the way across there. This one wasn't too bad, so I'm going to go ahead and do this off camera, get it perfectly flat, and we're going to come back and we'll bevel it. And we got a 35-degree bevel. I'm going to come back with the 1200, and I'm going to continue working on that bevel until I get a burr on the back of this, and a burr of the metal will flip up underneath it and you can feel it. And I'll come back and I'll get that burr off. There we go. Okay, so now we got a pretty decent sharp blade. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put it on the strop. We're going to charge it a little bit, and we're going to run this like 40 times, and then after that, we'll put it on the 16,000 and strop it again, and that puts that really good fine edge on there. I've learned that if I go 5 ways, one way with flattening the back of it, getting the burr off, and I go about 5 the other way. See, now it's getting really sharp. So now what we're going to do is introduce the 16,000. And once you do this, all you have to do is run it on the strop to keep it sharp. And I can feel it kind of sucking down to the glass. It's a glass piece. Do this way. Do it this way. Let me see. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so we've established it. Now we do one more time on the strop. And about 10-15 times or so, and this puts that really super fine edge on it. I've tried a million different ways, and This is the way that I discovered to make your irons really sharp, really polished. And I'll come back. I don't know why coming back the other way works. Maybe because my strop isn't flat and the strop is hitting the areas, you know, that aren't flat on the strop. I don't know. Okay. All right. We're to scary sharp now. Now let's cut. The WD-40 sitting on there seemed to work really, really well. Everything moves on here. So now we're just going to go ahead and assemble it and try to make a cut with it. Hopefully it'll work perfectly. Let's put our lever screw in there, lever cap screw in, and we'll adjust that when we get everything together. So the way to do this, this is a bevel down tool, which means the bevel is down toward the work surface. This will go right behind it, about, I guess, a 1/16 or so of an inch, you know, really super close. And we want to make sure that we don't hit the lever cap on the iron, the blade that we just sharpened. And these are always a booger bear for me to get started. I don't know why. I've got a challenge with it. Hey, I got it that time. So I'll just eyeball this so it's behind it. That's probably close enough. Okay. Now, since we moved everything around on this plane, we don't know where the adjustment is. But we'll fit it down, and then we'll get the lever cap, and we'll do the lever cap adjustment screw. Normally, you just do need to do the lever cap adjustment screw just one time, and you never really need to touch it. Once you get it in place, that feels good, so you can unloosen it. It might be a little bit too tight. Let me take it out just a tiny bit. That's a little bit too loose. My iron moves. Okay. I can still move the lateral adjustment and the depth adjustment. Now right here, we're going to start sending the iron out. We're going to go deeper with it, and it's really out of adjustment. Now you can see it starting to, here, right there. You can see it starting to come out. And let's try to make a cut with it. We're going to try a piece of pine first. And go down a little bit more. I'm just barely moving my depth adjustment. There we go. Wow. Pretty heavy cut. Pretty heavy cut. So I'm cutting more on the right. So I'm going to move my depth adjustment. That's cutting right down the middle of my blade. It's a heavy cut. I'm gonna back it off some. You just want a real nice thin paper, thin shaving from it. There we go. There we go. That's a little bit better. Nice. Let's try a piece of oak. Put a piece of oak in. It's thinner. I've got to change my dowel. I'm going to try a little piece of oak. Very nice. Well, this Stanley number 35 transitional plane worked out just beautifully. It just took a little bit of tuning and sharpening of the iron. For our next episode, we'll be covering this hollow plane made in the mid-1800s by Mr. Chapman.